hands of lawyers or politicians, but people, ordinary people, can trust. Now that is the basis of a populist argument, and in my mind it disconnects people from having to choose between politicians, having to choose the lesser of evils sometimes, actually watching what's going on, and disconnecting from the process in the hopes of finding someone to pop up that says, I am not a politician. Well, the worst politicians in history have said, I'm not like all the other politicians. So that in itself is not a characteristic by which we can choose people to have any power over us. So I think that's something where you have to really think and sort of refine your story. Okay. Because that's not working. It's historically been shown not to work.
Okay, well, I see your point, but I've tried to stress before that really something we need in this surveillance situation is something like the free and independent press in a technology way. You know, we need the free and independent technologists. You know, somebody who's not paid for by the state, somebody who's not paid for by the industry, but somebody who's doing this out of his own free will, and probably in an institution. You know, not like the populist kind, but who can be trusted more as an independent source of knowledge and somebody who's really relying on an independent set of values as well. You know, that was more the direction I wanted to point to. Because actually I meet that problem a lot with people who are in public discussions, for instance. A lot of people say that, well, I don't trust these data protection guys, you know, that's lawyers, they're paid by the state, or the data protection guy in my company, you know, he works very close with the boss and he's paid by the boss. I don't trust him, you know, I don't like him, you know, and that's the thing I say, we need some sort of independent positions there. Do you agree with that, or, yeah? Okay. Further questions?
You said before that we have to politicize the people because of forgetting them. Actually say that surveillance is not a good idea because of the efficiency. But the problem is that mainstream media actually influences the decisions of the people, what you said before in your presentation as well. But the mainstream media works with fear. And you actually have to change the mainstream media that the people do not have any more the fear, because they want surveillance because they think that they have less fear because of the surveillance.
Okay, yeah. Well, I don't think we can change the media or the pattern of media in which media work. I wish we could, because I see a lot of problems there in this media perception and everything. But I also think, or I've also made get the impression over the past years that the media are also working for us. You know, it's like when all these cases are in the media where data protection doesn't work, or when the telecom scandal, for instance, comes to the press, then in a way, this in terms of politicizing things, that usually helps us. You know, so we could, but I think we should try and contact the press a bit more, you know, try and work together with them, find more scandals, give them more material so we can get a counterweight to all this fear-making on terrorism with the fear-making of what happens when your data are lost. I think that's it's not a good way, but from an activist point of view, that's the way I think we should handle that politically. Yeah?
Okay. Basically, adding on to that, I think one of the key problems is that once this fear is created, again, like terrorism is the fear of life, whilst losing access to personal data is not so perceived as terrifying as dying in a terrorist incident. Therefore, I think what we need in order to fight against this fear of like terrorism or the other current threats we experience, we need to find alternative situations and find other ways to approach these problems, tell people, hey, this is not a way out. Giving up our privacy isn't a good solution, and I think often I've heard the argument of in favor of CCTV surveillance. It's a good idea against rapes in lone parks at night and things like that. And if you tell people that this is actually not doing anything to prevent crimes, but instead the simple installation of light sources does much more to protect people at night, I think that's the kind of alternative solution we have to find, but yeah, anyways.
Yeah, no, I totally agree that that's certainly an important point where we need to work a lot harder. But that's also what I wanted to say in my opening speech, that we have a lot of arguments already. I mean, the surveillance studies is a broad field which has developed a huge, vast amount of very good arguments against surveillance, which are independent of all these security issues in the first place, you know. And we would have to, the thing we have to do as activists is publicize these things and use them to politicize the people, you know, because there is another point about surveillance and there is another point about privacy which we can stress. We just have to do that more often, you know. So I think that would be something which we could use as a counterweight to all these security issues. And then another thing I've always been trying to argue is that stuff like freedom and privacy are security issues as well, you know, because they protect me from a centralized, overpowered state, you know, and that is something which has always cost a lot of lives. You know, that's probably not going to happen today, not next year, but probably in 20 years, you know. And then surveillance is a security issue in itself. So that's something you have to consider as well. I mean, also as a society, that's something which many ethicists of technology say, we have to be able to take some risks. You know, as a democratic, free society, we have to be able to live with the risk of terrorists, and we can't just build an overarching and huge apparatus of security surveillance, because that contradicts our ideas of freedom and democracy. And that's just... Any further questions?
Yes, one, and I think it fits because where are these studies that you speak of, that we have to publicize? And most important, how can I show someone that has a different opinion that informants in politics and economy really are getting fewer because they fear surveillance? So how can I show someone that these are facts, that we pay more than we gain through surveillance?
Okay. Well, look at surveillance studies. That's an interdisciplinary, cross-disciplinary research field. They have produced a lot. You can also contact me, write me. I'll send you a list of readings and of arguments. You can also look up some former talks of me. I've been trying to mention a couple of these arguments already in earlier talks. And then the situation with the informants to the press is something that's still pretty new. It's not really publicized on a broad scale. We heard that because we are contacted by the press and they're telling us they need something to protect their informants because they're losing their informants. Can we do something? Can we help them? But that's just been cropping up over the last year. So I think it still takes a while to get into the public mind or to get investigated scientifically or by the press. So I don't know how else to answer that. Yes?
Another point that I see is, at this moment the freedom is still here, but nobody uses it because they fear too much the consequences. So I would say we should more remind the people to use the right for freedom to say, no, I don't want to give my data here.
Mm. Yeah, certainly, I totally agree. But that's something we haven't been doing much, and that's something where we have to look at our own responsibility. We don't just a thing we usually always did in the club was to inform the people. You know, continuously inform the people, give out press information and all that stuff. But one thing we never did or didn't do until very recently was to give them some sort of forum where they could just raise their voice, raise their hands, or show up. You know, we like organize demonstrations, organize, I don't know, workshops or some sort of discussions, public stuff like that. That's something we didn't do very much. Of course, when you activate people by informing them all the time, you also have to give them some sort of forum to be active in, you know. That's something that certainly points to us that we have to do more into this direction.
Yeah, my question is kind of personal to you. What's the next step? We can argue with words and all the good and great arguments we had today, and people don't really know at all. And we can argue with actions. And I guess the whole leakage of data this year here in Germany and Britain raised people's attentions and did a great job. The telecom did a great job for us this year, kind of. And should we do more arguing in words or in action, like initiating the leakage of more data that it hurts even more?
Well, both, you know. I mean, I think we really have to work on a much broader scale than we did before. Of course, this data leakage is a good thing to show the people that the assurances which all these companies make that there is security with their data and that they can be safe about their data, that's just an illusion, you know. That's something we know as hackers. There is no security. Yeah? That's something we have to bring out to the public clear and loud to really make them know, well, okay, well, if there is no security, then anything I say, do, speak, or do electronically actually is a threat to me, and it can be known by anyone, and then maybe I know someone whom I don't want to know that. You know? So that's one thing we should certainly stress, and we should use these cases in the press to stress that particular point. But I think we also should pick up other lines of arguments and to use this general media attention we have now to bring other arguments into this discussion as well. As I mentioned some earlier, like the psychological set of mind you're going into, then that there's their monoculture values coming up. That would be too much to mention now, but we should do that as well.
Okay, I want to emphasize a little more on the data leakage problem. Early in your speech you mentioned that Datenschutz has a history primarily in Germany, and then went on about data protection in terms of regulating who gets access to data that is present and who doesn't. And that is something I run into virtually every discussion about this topic I have had in the past. People usually understand the term Datenschutz in this way, that it means protecting data. But that's not what Datenschutz or data protection, it's not really a good translation of the term, what Datenschutz is all about. Datenschutz means protection of people from the abuse of their data, and regulating access to data that is stored from whoever won't just fit the bill. Because as the scandals in the past year have shown, once data is gathered and stored somewhere, there will be abuse. It's just a matter of time. So we have to communicate to the people that it doesn't suffice to protect data that is stored somewhere and regulate who gets access to that data and who doesn't, but to make sure that the collection of data is avoided wherever possible.
I totally agree with you. You know, that's the point I've been trying to make, that we have to avoid that and return to this whole concept of avoidance of data. And so another point I've been stressing as well is this regulation thing, you know, that precisely regulations are too soft, you know. They can change every other day, and they're actually changed by a lot of exceptions which are being brought in by the police and industry, and they're constantly changing the laws and everything. So regulations are crap, you know. The regulations are not any substantial basis to do anything. So we have to do it in a technological way, and we have to return to the basic concept of avoidance. So I totally agree with you. And I also agree with you on the point that data protection is a bad term, but that's the common English translation. But I also think that Datenschutz is a bad German term anyway, because it's such a bigger concept, and the term Datenschutz doesn't really grasp all the notions. So, okay. Fertig? One more question? Any takers? John?
Well, it seems to me, if your conclusion is that data protection doesn't actually influence people to believe that their data is safe, and indeed their data isn't safe, then maybe we shouldn't be doing data protection. But instead what I keep hearing is, oh, well, the cure for this problem is to do it even more. It's sort of like the drug war. If you can't eliminate drugs, make the penalties higher, even though it doesn't work. So it would seem to me the right thing to do would be eliminate the data protection laws and just inform people sort of the Scott McNeely theory of privacy. You have no privacy, get over it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point I've been trying to make as a last thing. You know, we should we should abandon the whole idea of data protection. In fact, because I believe it's not effective. You know, it's not effective in a psychological sense to protect us from manipulating ourselves. It's not effective in any real sense because the regulations are changed all the time, and then the worst